From the Homestead Studios in Santa Clarita, California, this is a Headache Soul production. Welcome to Just the Tip-Sters, America's favorite true crime podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Morgan. With me today is my handsome and talented co-host, Joshua Arctic Hammer Bevan.
Arctic Hammer.
Yeah.
This sounds like a superhero.
The Arctic Hammer is coming. I saw a meme that said that, and it's still Arctic Hammery.
Okay.
Back east. And in the south, there's like snow.
Oh, that's the weather pattern?
Yes.
That's the name for the weather pattern?
The Arctic Hammer.
The Arctic Hammer.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
That's your new nickname. And I said, it said in large letters, the Arctic Hammer is coming. And I said, so you're telling me this is not the best title of a porn film ever?
Yes. Oh, yeah, right. Okay. I went the Marvel route.
Right.
You went the gay porn route.
Yeah,
all right, fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Either way, I'm
Right.
I'm a hero to some people.
Totally. Completely and utterly. Marvel, my asshole. Sure. Okay. So just as a side note that no one needs to know, my first husband, we were married for 2 years, and his nickname for his penis was the Hammer of the Gods. And that did not fit. No, that did not fit.
Oh.
I think that was a Led Zeppelin thing or something. He
Right.
worked at a classic rock station.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I appreciate men who do not have nicknames for their genitals.
You appreciate that?
I do. I appreciate that they don't.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a good... Uh-oh. Josh was looking...
No, I don't have one.
Okay, good. I was like, he's shiftily looking to the right. I'm like, oh, no. Oh, no. Is it some weird... I don't want to know.
I mean, other people have
okay.
them for
right.
me,
okay.
but I don't.
If they call you whatever it was, what was it Ice Cube said, and it was a really good day. Like Lil Kim said he was the Top Gun. Is that it? Is your penis?
Lil Kim said he was the Top Gun?
Uh-huh. Did
they get together?
I don't know. Maybe it was just like, bragging.
Oh, okay. Oh, sure.
You know how they do.
Okay.
Boys. So whatever nickname people have given you for your penis, that's between you and your God and your nickname giver. Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. Why did it start like this? Why do we always start in the gutter? We start right in the goddamn gutter. This is horrible. Maybe I'll just have Matt.
I thought we were talking about the weather.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Marvel. Yeah.
It started so innocently.
Yeah. He hits people with his penis and then they freeze. Is that what happens?
Yeah.
You don't know. But you're writing it down now.
Yeah.
Okay. This episode is brought to you by our sponsors at Graveline Tours. You go to graveline.ripu, and in the promo code area, you put Tipster40 and you get 40% off of any tour that you would like to go to if you were in the Southern California area. And I'm telling you, there's some really good ones. Super, super interesting, fascinating. I found out more about the Black Dahlia last night than I ever wanted to know. You thought it was really bad already, her being like,
Wait, did you go on the tour?
No.
Oh.
No. I read.
You read another Black Dahlia thing. Oh, okay.
Oh, my God.
I was going to say, you didn't tell me you were going to go?
Yeah, no, I read stuff, and I was like, this did not happen. Like stuff I've never heard.
Okay.
I'll tell Joshua off the air because if I said into the microphone.
I don't know much. I saw the movie that has really not much to do with the actual
Black Dahlia. Yeah. Well, I mean, it was bad enough the way she was, segmented and left, but oh Lord, what else was done to her? Had no clue. I'm hoping that this publication, and I think it was a good one, might have been the Atlantic. There's more coming out about it now, and I don't think it's because of the tour starting. I think there's some stuff by Steve Hodel, the retired LAPD officer who thinks his father, Dr. George Hodel, did it. And it's interesting. But what was done to her? Ooh, worse than it's on the level with Randy Kraft, the scorecard killer. I'll just say that, who did absolutely terrible things to like 60 young men. So I don't want to talk about that anymore. Okay. It's terrible, but I'll tell you later. Okay. So this is the second time we've done this because the first time we did it, 59 minutes of it never showed up. By the way,
welcome to Earth.
Welcome
from your home planet,
from my home planet,
whatever
right.
planet that is. So.
Yeah, poor sweet Joshua and poor sweet Matt have to put up with whatever the fuck it is that happens every time I try to record a podcast. So.
I don't get it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, me either, my friend. Me either. I end up like, I try to be a good person. I don't know why this happens. But yeah, it was what happened to the episode, which you will hear before this one, which we recorded after this the first time. I can't explain it. Joshua can't explain it. It's unexplainable. Mm-hmm. So we're going to try this again because the story is so interesting and it is, a murder. Granted, it was a murder in battle, but the story is so fascinating, and it was suggested to me by my fantastic grief counselor, Karen, because I was mentioning a case that Joshua actually had such a great idea. We were looking into trying to find ground penetrating radar for a site. And turns out it's expensive. And we found some other things. By the way, the human remains detection dog is ready to go.
Oh, good.
I forgot to tell you before we started about the conversation yesterday.
Oh, good.
So we will talk about that.
Right.
Yeah. Again, I feel terrible not telling you, Tip-Sters, but you'll find out soon enough. But I'm like, as soon as we get done recording, I'll tell Joshua all this fun stuff or terrible stuff. Yeah, you'll find out. Well, you'll find out
when there's actual stuff.
Yes,
it's gonna be a full episodes.
Let's hope so. Fingers crossed. So, ground penetrating radar is part of this because it helped a woman who was singularly focused on finding what happened to Richard III. Now, I embarrassingly thought that Richard III was a character in a Shakespeare play. Didn't know he was real. Yeah. I'm not wrong. He was in a play. And I, had such like disdain for him. And it was like, why? This is boring and I hate it. Sure. I didn't really, but are the Montagues and the Capulets real? Maybe they were based on people, Romeo and Juliet. Maybe they were based on real people.
Well, no, I don't know that those were, but right. It's the same thing as this. It's like Family Feuds.
Exactly.
It's happening.
Exactly. Yeah.
Richard III was all in the Yorks versus the Lancasters.
Yes. So, exactly.
Were they actual, real people? No, but I'm sure they were based on some feud that was happening.
Right. And Richard III was actually the king, and he ruled for 2 years, 1483 to 1485, when he was killed in the Battle of Bosworth. But going back, a amazing woman, Phillipa Langley, British woman, saw Richard III in a play and in play form. And I had seen a documentary done by Al Pacino. I think it was called Looking for Richard, actually, where he played Richard III. And as with most everything involving Al Pacino, he kind of like chews the scenery,
He's directing the documentary and he's still the star.
But he's showing like his performance, like intercut with his performance on Broadway.
Okay. Yeah. He played
Richard III.
Got it.
So with a hunched back and a withered arm and, just like a Quasimodo type. Sure. I believe there's a Shakespeare line where even dogs like wouldn't come near me. He's like, Richard is lamenting, even dogs won't come near me.
Yeah, there's a bunch in that play. There's a lot of soliloquy that happens. Mm-hmm. Homeboy, you say Al Pacino was chewing up the scenery.
Yeah.
I've never seen him, but Sidney Poitier definitely chews it up. But it's kind of written that way,
right?
It's like a soliloquy, standing there all by himself, just spouting off whatever.
Right.
Then 2 more scenes, and then another one. He's standing over in this other place.
Right.
Just every 3 scenes is another scenery chewing soliloquy.
Right.
Yeah.
So Phillipa Langley sees this play with her husband and her 2 sons, And she has chronic fatigue syndrome, which in England is called ME. It's, like, I don't know what it is in, it's probably the Latin form or something, but they still call it ME in England, but it's chronic fatigue. And
Okay.
she felt like that she related to Richard because he was, portrayed as so disfigured.
Okay.
It's like she just really thought she related to this. So she started in 2004, started looking at his life, and she wanted to write a screenplay
Okay.
because she felt a kinship with someone who's, got physical issues or health issues.
Sure.
In 2006, she in her work got Richard disinterred, and we found him. But before that, there were other theories about where he could have been buried. There were people who were like, stop this stupid search. He was thrown into the River Soar. He was dug up and thrown into the River Soar because he was so hated. She just never believed that. In 2006, she's going by old maps of where a church could be. And she ends up they call it a car park. We call it a parking lot.
Mhm.
She ends up in a parking lot of like a civil community center where you get civil aid or community aid. And she
Like a
sees
town hall building or whatever.
kind of, but it's like where you would go to apply for benefits.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So she ends up standing on the letter R.
Oh.
And she's like, this is where he would have been buried.
Hmm.
And she stands there a long time and she looks sort of, discombobulated. And a security guard comes over and goes, "Are you okay?" And she says, "Yes. What does this stand for?" And he says, "Well, reserved, of course." And she's like, "Oh, okay."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But it comes back later. I promise it comes back later. So this amazing film was directed by Stephen Frears and written by Steve Coogan. Stephen Frears of the Dangerous Liaisons, High Fidelity, The Grifters.
Mhm.
Amazing director. Steve Coogan, a phenomenal British actor, just as adept at drama as comedy. Played in my favorite role. He played the director in Tropic Thunder who steps on the landmine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's a terrific guy. And in a really weird kind of convergence, Stephen Frears grew up in Leicester, which is the city where this parking lot is.
Got it.
And he said, I love Leicester. I grew up there, and I had heard all of my life about women who felt marginalized. This is my opportunity to do a film where a woman is front and center.
Cool.
So Phillipa Langley is played by Sally Hawkins, an amazing actress, and Steve Coogan plays Philippa's husband, John. Sally Hawkins in real life has lupus.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The real life actress has a physical ailment. And Sally Hawkins looks nothing like, I don't want to be rude, she doesn't look anything like Phillipa Langley. Phillipa Langley is like what would be called a true British rose. Kind of strawberry blonde hair, blue eyes.
Got it.
She's very beautiful.
Okay.
Sally Hawkins can be beautiful if you, doll her up. And she plays such a mousy woman with short, dark hair. It's very, she's got a beautiful way about her, but you have to kind of, I don't want to sell out my gender, but you kind of have to doll her up a little bit,
All right. Well, yeah.
The way most of us are. I mean, I get up at 4 a.m. for, natural beauty.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This doesn't happen without.
Same.
Yeah.
I mean,
I meant to tell you, your blush is beautiful.
Thank you.
Whatever that color is. I'm going to have to get the name of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's actually, it's this natural thing. I do the little pinch. And
you
smack
pinch your,
and,
okay.
Yeah.
You just like to be hit by yourself or others. I've heard that about you. So in 2006, when Phillipa stands on the R, she decides to switch from looking at Richard's life to looking at Richard's death.
Okay.
So she's now investigating his death. Now the film makes it look like this all happened in like a matter of months.
Okay.
But it took her from 2006 to 2012.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. To get money collected to get people behind her. Of course, a lot of people passed her off as like, oh, crazy. Okay, crazy person who
Sure.
thinks that, Richard III is here. She joined a society, Richard III Society, which is, fun because it's a group of weirdos who get together at a pub once a week, and they're all really smart and they all have really great theories
Cool.
about what happened. And it turns out this wasn't that new. This was started in 1975. So one researcher from the Richard III Society in 1975 said she felt like that the church where Richard had been buried was located in one of 3 different parking lots, but she didn't footnote her material. And Phillipa Langley is like, I'm just going to start looking at the
Okay.
3 parking lots that, she thought there might be something.
Got it.
And she narrowed it down. There's a biography of Richard III written in 1993 where the author Paul Murray Kendall is like, I think he's here. So through the years, there have been people who have thought this is where he probably is.
Okay.
And,
approximate locations, or they're like kind of pinpointed?
Pretty close.
Oh, okay.
Really close. Like, so this woman who she doesn't mention her name, had in 1975 said, I think he's in one of these 3 parking lots because of the grounds. Back then they would have buried royalty in a church cemetery or garden or something to do, like near a church. And the churches, had been knocked down or bowled over. There was Greyfriars and Blackfriars, the Greyfriars Church and the Blackfriars Church.
Okay.
And several people thought he was in one, but it turns out he was in the other. They thought he was in the Greyfriars, but he was actually buried in like the courtyard of the Blackfriars Church.
Got it.
And it happened to be made into a parking lot.
Wow.
We're talking 500 years later, but still, fascinating shit. So here's Phillipa like being completely ignored, being thought of as like, oh, you're nutty. You're completely nutty right now, aren't you, lady? And she's like, no, I believe the last big battle of the War of the Roses, the Battle of Bosworth, I believe he was killed here. And there's, kind of ignoring most of Shakespeare's play and going toward historians who actually also some of them wrote in a poetic way. Like Richard's, what would you call like on your shield, your mark,
your suit of arms?
Yeah, your coat of arms, your suit of arms. His symbol was the boar.
Okay.
I know. And there's a poet, a 15th century poet who wrote, Henry scalped the boar.
Oh, okay.
And they think that was like sort of a metaphor for he's the one that killed Richard in battle. Henry, I think he was Henry the Seventh. Yeah. He was like, no, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. But then 10 years later, he paid for like a really beautiful stone monument. Marble stone monument
for Richard III.
For Richard III, that ended up not being tended to and then being covered up by weeds and then being eventually
But that monument is somewhere else, just a random.
It may have been destroyed. No, it was where he was buried.
Oh, it was where.
Yes, it was where he was buried. It was like noted by many different historians. There was this.
I got it.
And then like 100 years later, it is completely covered with weeds and not tended to.
Sure.
Nobody cared. He was such a disgraced figure because they thought he did some terrible things we're going to talk about a little later, which he didn't do. But so it's like, oh, he's this like hunchback who dogs won't talk to him and he's unattractive and he's evil and he's just bloodthirsty for the throne and like all of this stuff. And here Phillipa is like, I relate to this man who was looked down upon because he was disfigured. And she felt like she was looked down upon because she had chronic fatigue. And she was like, it's like show up to work anyway. Right. It wasn't like, she could take a day off. She wasn't supported. And she finally just stopped going to work.
Mhm.
So she spends all of her time, and in this movie, The Lost King, there is a lot of sweet creative license taken where this actor named Harry Lloyd, British actor who does a wonderful job, he's the one she sees in the play, and he shows up and is mostly silent, but shows up around her quite often, and they have conversations. Well, one-sided mostly, where she's talking
Oh,
to
she's
Richard.
talking to Richard
Mhm.
the Third
In
as
the
like a phantom. As I got it.
in the embodiment of this actor who
But
played
it's
him on stage.
got it.
It's a lovely creative license.
Sure.
At one point, one of her sons looks out the window and she's sitting on a bench talking to no one. But he shows up often, like kind of in doorways, and and she talks to him, and she'll say, "Don't like don't run away." And
Got it.
it's very sweet, and it's a really great kind of conceit to
Cool.
have him there in physical form in this film. She said, Phillipa Langley, the human, said, I didn't have hallucinations.
Okay.
I did talk to him a lot, but it was like talking, like how I
Sure.
talk to Mark. It's like they're in the room. You can talk to them even though you're not hearing back. If I start to hear back from Mark, things are going to get weird. If she started to hear back from Richard, things,
Right.
they would have had reason to, take her in. But she talked to him, like talking out her ideas, her thoughts, like, where are you? What happened? And she looked deeply into his life before looking deeply into his death. And many people just were like, this is futile. He is not here.
Right.
He's not here. She brings some of her research to an esteemed Professor Buckley at the University of Leicester, where she thinks the parking lot is that he's buried under. And he's like, yeah, okay, sure. Well, you know what? If you find him, I'll eat my hat. And it's like, okay. He ends up, for reasons, the university is cutting back in the arts program and they may not keep his department and his researchers around. He ends up wanting this project as something to put some new life into his own career.
Yeah, get some good press over it.
Yes.
Sure.
So he, helps her somewhat, and the university is swayed by her passion, and they donate some money, and she gets the idea to, kind of commence this dig, doing what you and I wanted to do with ground penetrating radar, which, by the way, said there was nothing there.
Oh.
But they commenced the dig anyway.
The ground penetrating radar. Okay, would it show 500 years later? Would it still show bones or no? I mean, okay.
Wasn't that deep of a dig.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it's the type of stone used. I will just also tell you, having a discussion with the human remains detection trainer yesterday.
Yeah.
She said she was responsible for a local case to us in North Hills in the San Fernando Valley back in November of 2023, where a man buried a man who'd been missing for 6 months under a slab in his backyard.
Yeah.
And had a gazebo built on top of it. And the ground penetrating radar said there was nothing. And she said, I trust my dog.
And the dog smelled it?
And they got him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So while
the dog is better than the machines.
In this instance, and
cheaper. Kibble's way cheaper than
much cheaper,
renting this.
but they had to tear up all,
Yeah.
But they ended up arresting him. So figure out your own concrete pad from now on, fucker. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, she said, I trust my dog. And she said, sometimes I think, does she just want to please me or want a treat? And I'm like, that is my problem the whole time with this kind of thing. But yeah, so the ground penetrating radar on this parking lot showed nothing. And everyone was starting to pull their little bit of financing. And Philippa's like, no. And she goes out on the internet and puts it out worldwide. There are so many people who are fans of trying to find Richard III.
Okay.
She needed, I don't know how it translates into dollars, but she needed, I'm going to call it $15,000.
Right.
It was 15,000 pounds. And she ended up collecting 17,000.
Nice.
Yes. Along with Professor Buckley and a lot of other people searching for him and doing, historical records, So combined with all of the research with Professor Buckley, with Phillipa, with the Richard III Society, is a historian named John Ashdown Hill, who has actually matched a mitochondrial DNA sequence discovered to Richard's nephew in Canada, 8,000 times removed or something, like 34 times.
Oh, okay.
And what's fascinating, this man whose last name is Ibsen, I think his name is either Michael or Mark Ibsen. He looks like Richard.
Oh, cool.
They have the same nose.
Wow.
It's so fascinating. There are just some things in genetics I guess you can't change.
Sure.
It looked like Richard had kind of long, pretty hair, and
All
he, died at 32. So who knows if he would have kept it. His nephew, his Canadian nephew, doesn't have any hair. I don't know. I'm going to say he's in his 50s, but they have very similar shaped eyes and the same damn nose.
Wow.
And there were, of course, paintings done of Richard being the king. And Phillipa found out that art historians had changed some of the portraits to make him less attractive.
Oh, no.
They had covered over original paintings and given him almost more like slanty demon eyes.
Wow.
And not a bump on his nose, but a more elongated nose.
Huh.
It's weird. I mean, I'm going to call it, the 14th, 15th century social media.
Sure.
Almost like painted filters.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
If you think someone,
wow.
If you think somebody is bad, what you can do as an artist or a quote unquote historian, not being even handed, you're like, I don't like this guy. He was terrible.
Yeah.
To make him like a hunchback with a withered arm, and none of those things were true.
Okay, and he didn't have these deformities.
None of those things were true.
Huh.
None of those things were ever even real. So what happened on day one in August of 2012? They find Richard, and Phillipa thinks it's Richard, and they're all like, no, it's not. We're going to continue. So Professor Buckley insists that they continue further in the parking lot. They find 8 male graves, a mass grave.
Okay.
8 male bodies buried together. She keeps going back to the first day. And she has to basically stomp her feet a week later and say, how much would it cost to go back and look at this one?
And dig over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Continue the dig. Because what they found, this skeleton's feet were cut off. And they were cut off because of pipes that were laid.
Oh, okay. So since then, plumbers came in, laid some pipes, and didn't notice that they dug up feet.
Didn't care. It's we're going to cut off it's an old skeleton. Who gives a shit?
Okay.
It's not Richard III or anyone.
Right.
It's a guy buried in a mass grave, whatever.
Sure.
But it's just him by himself. Yeah. So his feet are missing. But so they don't, they're just like, oh, it's just a guy. Just a guy laying here. Under the R, by the way.
Oh, this is okay. In the spot that she said.
Under the R.
Wow.
Directly under the R for reserved for Richard.
Sure.
So a week goes by and she goes to Professor Buckley and says, how much would it cost to continue back over here? And he's like, I don't want to do this. And she goes, I have $800 left in what I have gathered.
Oh.
I want to do this. And he throws up his hands and goes to lunch. She gets upset and takes a walk, instructs them to go back and dig. And within an hour, they're both getting texts. It's him.
Amazing.
This amazing female archaeologist is brushing away. And she's like, they get back. They all get back. By then, film crews are there. Phillipa's being pushed to the side. And it's like, oh, he had a hunchback. No, he didn't. Was buried so long, his skull was pushed down on his chest.
Oh, jeez.
So they get him out and they look. What he had was adolescent idiopathic scoliosis
So a little,
of the lower spine.
a little curve. In
Yeah.
the
It did not cause him to walk differently, to stand differently. What happened was his right shoulder was a little higher than the left, and that is portrayed in portraits.
Okay.
That's also written in like, poems. It's like, just a slight off kilter
Okay.
that would barely be noticed unless being a royal, you're not supposed to have any flaws.
All right.
So, it was barely noticed, but if you noticed it, you noticed it.
Sure.
But it wasn't like, he was portrayed as like having trouble like breathing because of the hunchback. Like he'd be like, withered arm, hunchback, trouble breathing because it would compress the lungs. None of that.
Wow.
Absolutely none of that happened. So they figure out it's him. They match him mitochondrial DNA. By now, the University of Leicester has billboards on buses. We found him.
Wow.
We found him.
Yeah, okay.
They have 13 speakers at the press conference. Phillipa Langley is the 13th person to speak.
Like she closes it out
Yeah.
with a big
No,
hurrah?
No, she's not the closer.
So,
By then, everybody's like tired, done, and
They're
wants to go
done.
home. And she's the woman who gathered the money, who did this on her own. I mean, she had help, obviously, but this was her force year after year pushing people to do this. So they figure out it's him. They figure out he didn't have all of the deformities that they said. He was definitely hit in the head or even scalped by Henry VII.
Okay.
They think he delivered the glancing blow.
Sure.
There are poems where he is strapped naked over a horse and paraded around for everyone to,
Oh, Jesus.
Mm-hmm. There was some slices in ribs where, after death, people
are jabbing at him. And,
right.
Ugh, God.
Yeah.
That's hardcore.
Yeah. It was like he was, made to be humiliated, which is, I think, why a lot of people thought, oh, he was just tossed in the river. He was so hated. But he wasn't as hated. I feel like the hatred grew as the years went on.
Oh, okay.
So you might be familiar with the story of the princes in the tower, his two nephews.
Right. Okay.
Who sort of never showed up again.
Right.
They were put in the Tower of London to be protected because their father, Edward, I think Edward V, maybe the fourth. I'll actually find that in just a second, but he died quickly.
Yeah. Okay. So that's all in the Shakespeare play.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Richard was put in charge of their health.
Yeah.
Protecting them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So King Ed, Richard's brother, died young. They said he was very much like Henry VIII. He liked wine, women, song, jousting.
Sure.
Overdid a little bit.
Okay.
So they don't know for sure, but he got sick and died within like 5 days. They think it was pneumonia.
Okay.
But, so his two sons, Edward V and Richard of Duke of York, were put in the Tower of London, and he put his brother Richard III into in charge of them.
Got it.
And then they were sort of never seen again.
Yeah.
There are some sightings and there are some theories that are really fascinating. We'll get to that just a second. But so Richard III is, exhumed, so to speak, and he is reburied. There's a writer named Audrey Strange who suggests that the reason people thought that Richard had been dug up and thrown into the River Soar was confusing him with a body that was disinterred by a mob, and the bones were thrown into the River Swift, and that is the remains of John Wycliffe. And she thinks that down through the years, that got thrown into the story of Richard.
Got it.
And it wasn't even about him. There were maps done, and a cartographer, John Speed wrote, the history of Great Britain, and he said in this map of Leicester, the city of Leicester, he shows the Greyfriars Church where the former Blackfriars Church was, which is, he drew the map incorrectly, which people were thinking, yeah, like this is what happened here, and it wasn't. That's what happened there.
Got it.
So, I mean, how much can you trust historians? That's what I'm like. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and seeing some of its mistakes like that,
Right.
and then some of its
big
like
mistakes,
deliberate, like trying
changing
to
his
defame
portrait.
somebody.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the TMZ of the 15th century or something. Yeah. So John Ashdown Hill, who had discovered the mitochondrial DNA, had traced it back to Richard III's sister, Anne of York.
Okay.
And that's how he gets Michael Ibsen in Canada. His, what did you say it was, 16 times?
16 times.
Yes, his nephew, 16 times removed, is still with us and has the same eyes and the same nose.
It's crazy.
Different mouth. But yeah, it was like, this is so fascinating to me. I mean, I was thinking Richard III was just this terrible character written by William Shakespeare. Right. I didn't think he was real, which is so sad. I'm admitting this to you, though, so you know that I'm not perfect.
I mean,
no matter what you say.
I beg to differ.
So when they actually get everything out of this hole, they find there was an arrowhead underneath his spine. His skull had several injuries, which makes sense. It's, a horrible thing to think that he was put on display naked, paraded around.
God, yeah.
I know. So on the skull, there's a blow from a pointed weapon that had penetrated the crown of his head. There was a bladed weapon that had clipped the skull and sheared off, layers of bone without penetrating it. It's one of those big, like, medieval looking. That's like nice, huh?
Yeah, okay.
Other holes in his skull and lower jaw were found to be consistent with dagger wounds in his chin and his cheek. Those could have come afterward.
Okay.
When people were, poking.
Yeah.
So after the University of Leicester takes, center stage and is like, yeah, we found him. I have to say Professor Buckley said, maybe too quietly, but he did say, Phillipa should have been up here with all of us. A coworker actually made him a cake in the shape of a hat because he said he would eat his hat.
Nice.
So there's video of him eating a piece of the hat.
The hat cake. Yeah, awesome.
Yes. So here we are in March of 2015. His bones are sealed in a lead-lined casket and placed in then a wooden coffin. They're moved from the University of Leicester to Leicester Cathedral, which they go through the site where the Battle of Bosworth happened, where he was likely murdered. On Wednesday, the 25th of March in 2015, his remains are in repose in the cathedral. And there were people who waited hours in line just to see the coffin. There were a lot of dignitaries that showed up. Cardinal Vincent Nichols, Archbishop of Westminster. I mean, it was like a really big memorial service for a royal.
Yeah, cool.
It was good. Yeah. So March 26th of 2015, he was reburied in the presence of the Archbishop of Canterbury.
The Pope?
I'm not talking to you right now.
Okay.
No, Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury. Several members of the royal family were present. Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, Prince Richard, the Duke of Gloucester, Bridget, the Duchess of Gloucester. It's like, all righty, I don't know who all these people are, but yay. So I think it's beautiful that people showed up. I really do. Even though Queen Elizabeth II was like, yeah, I'm not down. I don't give a crap.
I'm not gonna go.
Yeah.
Wow.
What's so beautiful is like the mayor of Leicester is like, yeah, you know what? We're going to do this.
Okay.
And they, go through town with a really big procession. I love that she kind of he overruled the monarchy.
Sure.
I know. I love that. And there are theories that King Charles III is in a different place than his mom and is like, you know what? I think there's some other things to be looked at. And I will tell you that Phillipa Langley said that finding him has gotten other people to be interested in these kind of things.
Good.
2 small bodies were found.
Uh-oh.
11 and 13-year-old male bodies.
Oh, the nephews?
Here's the thing. It's 2 small boys buried.
Hmm.
We don't know that it's them because
Okay.
Queen Elizabeth wouldn't let them be tested.
Oh.
It's in the
It's
area where the Tower of London would have been.
uh
There is also quite a few stories where the princes were moved away and didn't live the life of princes.
Oh, okay.
There are stories that they were reported to be illegitimate,
Mm-hmm.
so they wouldn't have, the King Edward V didn't really have a chance. He was 13, didn't have a chance to rule,
Sure.
disappeared, and then Richard III becomes the king for 2 years before he's killed.
Right.
There are Anne of York, his sister,
Mm-hmm.
wrote "The Boys Are Safe."
Okay.
There are names like John York, where one of them potentially was John York,
Okay.
grew up on a farm. So
Wow.
if these 2 bodies, which King Charles has said he is open to having tested,
Oh, okay.
turn out to be nephews of Richard, we would know. We would find out how they died, if they
Right.
died, if that's, There are rumors that it was at his behest. There are rumors that he had nothing to do with it, did not know.
Sure.
It's one of the beautiful things about The Lost King is Philippa keeps asking, we all know about the princes in the towers. Like she wants the specter of Richard III to tell her he didn't do it.
Oh, got it.
So she is I mean, I'm trying to believe that she doesn't have that she's not too prejudiced that he was like some great dude.
Okay.
I think I'm hoping
Swinging
she
it like
sees him as, a human
sure.
with fallible,
Sure.
things and wonderful things. And that, I mean, he was the last royal to die in battle,
Okay.
the very last royal to die in battle, but he was going to fight,
Right.
I mean, he was out there in the front lines.
Yeah.
So that's one of the beautiful things about the end of The Lost King. She's out on the battlefield of the Battle of Bosworth, and he rides up with some soldiers.
Cool.
And, it looks like he's thanking her.
Cool.
And, she's like, I'm so sorry bad things were said about you. And he said, you know the truth, and that's all that matters.
Oh,
It's really lovely.
that's sweet.
I mean, it's, it's fictional and yet
Sure.
it's lovely. And he can thank her for finding him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and I think this is all good, especially if what you say is true, that the new boss isn't the same as the old boss.
Mhm.
Charles is gonna
Let's hope so.
actually say, forget this family feud
Yeah.
junk. I don't care. I just want
He's interested in maybe, that's
history to
it.
be written correctly.
And do you know what he studied in college? Because I did not.
No, Charles?
Archaeology.
Oh, okay.
Charles studied archaeology in college. I did not know. Or I guess
Wow.
they call it university there.
Sure.
College in England, I guess, is high school. University is
Got it.
college here.
Right.
So in university, he studied archaeology.
Huh. Okay. Wow.
I did not
All right.
know.
No, I didn't either.
And he's fascinated with archaeology. And so let's hope, that he would allow this to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess this idea that family feuds and stuff, rumors or whatever, that turns into full on defaming.
Yeah.
That's and then that's what most people. I mean,
That's what I believed.
The history that I believed, it comes completely from the Shakespeare play.
Yeah.
Like I have it in my head that's real. Like that's how it really happened.
Well, I had it in my head that
But
he was like a monster,
Yeah.
and then found out he was like a real king, and then he's not that.
Yeah.
It is. I think it's truly fascinating.
Yeah.
I really do. So today, the area where he was found is the King Richard III Visitor Center.
Oh, cool. Good.
That parking lot's been transformed into the visitor center, which I think is really beautiful. And Phillipa Langley, is still doing research on, King Edward V and Richard of Shrewsbury, Duke of York. And she said, I can't say too much, but we're going to be announcing some new discoveries that the project has found out. When Richard was found, a lot of historians were quite dismissive of it, saying, oh, you just had good luck. And then saying, well, it doesn't matter anyway, because we all know that he murdered the princes in the tower. And she says, no, actually, we don't.
Yeah.
I love that that's her last sentence. Nope, we don't know that, do we?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty amazing. And Richard appeared in this 2016 children's book, The Fox and the Ghost King, in which the ghost of Richard III promises to help the football team in return for being released from his grave in the car park.
Nice.
I think that's so adorable. Can you imagine? Cool. Hey, fellas, I'm so glad I'm out now. Let's work on some plays.
Yes.
I got this secret where you go around with a sword and then you get the quarterback. I think it's adorable.
I mean, he must. Well, first of all, I think you're talking about two different sports, but
I am.
Well, when you say football in England, I think they mean soccer.
You're right.
But
that's hilarious.
But I mean, Homeboy must have been a good at battle strategy, right? I mean, he could probably come up with some good soccer plays.
I think you're right. I think you're right. Yeah, it's like, all right, you distract him and then you go around and soccer, not football. Yeah. They call it football. I know. How could I not figure that out? And I watched all 3 seasons of Ted Lasso repeatedly. Yeah. Well, that's the story of the murder of Richard III. And it's so fascinating to me. I want to learn more, and I've never considered myself much of a history buff. Not a buff, a history aficionado, or even somebody who's interested in it. But I'm telling you, I think there's just so much fascinating history in England, buried under those cobblestone streets.
Yeah, wow.
I know. I'll tell you, the closest thing to me that I've experienced is Boston. It has cobblestone streets, and it felt like I had gone back in time. Little towns, little winding streets, little lined with little mom and pop businesses, not like, big mall type things. Cool. And, it's like, you got to go every place we went in Boston, it felt like I was sneaking in the back door.
Oh, cool.
Because that's how it is. Like you pull up and it's like maybe 1.5 lanes, 1.5 car cobblestone, and you're like, am I going in here to be killed? Yeah. And it's like this very popular Italian restaurant.
Cool.
I know, it's very fascinating. So that's the cool. closest thing I think I felt to England. So I would love one day to go. I don't know that I would want to dig up anyone, because I don't like to get dirty, but I could watch other people dig.
Sure.
Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah.
You can see me doing that, right?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, good.
For sure. And say, hey,
dig deeper,
dig under the
harder,
dig
faster.
Under the R.
That's right. Under the reserved.
Look, it's there's an R there. Of course, he's under it.
Of course, that's where Richard is. Duh. Well, if you have a tip on a missing person or an unsolved homicide, or you just want to suggest a case to us, please give us a call at 832-TIPSTER. That's 832-847-7837. If you would like to leave us a review or a rating on Apple Podcasts, we'd be very grateful. You can find us at our social media platforms at Just the Tipsters at on our Facebook page, at JT Tipsters on Instagram, at JT Tipsters Pod on Twitter. You can email us at jttipsters@gmail.com, and more cowbell.
If you would like to support this podcast and get early access and other cool murderous swag, go to patreon.com/justthetipsters.